Decision Day. The Senate votes on the 20-week abortion ban. Its sponsor, Senator Lindsey Graham, is here. Addressing the nation, President Trump prepares his first State of the Union speech. We have a preview. Common ground. Pope Francis visits the Ukrainian community in Rome. Grammys gone too far. My thoughts on the awards missteps. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, January 29th, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Our top story tonight, FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is leaving his job. He's been a frequent target of the president and led the Bureau following the firing of former FBI Director James Comey. The White House says the president had nothing to do with the decision.
In terms of the situation today, as I just said, we've seen the reports just as all of you have. We don't have any specific comments, and I would refer you to the FBI for any specifics on the things that are taking place today.
McCabe was widely expected to retire upon his eligibility date, but his departure from the FBI's number 2 slot is effective Monday. The Senate is set to vote today on a bill criminalizing abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. It's called the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. Debate on the measure began Monday afternoon. While unlikely to get the 60 votes needed to pass, it may put pressure on 10 Democrats who are up for re-election in states President Trump won. A vote to ban abortion after 20 weeks failed in 2015. Let's welcome Senator Lindsey Graham, who sponsored the 20-week abortion ban bill in 2015 and this session. Sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
A recent Marist poll shows 76% of Americans across party lines believe there should be some restrictions on abortion. Right now, Supreme Court precedent says states can restrict abortion after fetal viability, which is about 28 weeks. This seems to ban abortion before viability. Is this a step to reverse Roe versus Wade?
No, this is an attempt to allow legislative bodies like the Congress and state houses to protect the unborn, not based on medical viability, but the fact that they can feel excruciating pain at 20 weeks. We're one of 7 nations, Lauren, in the entire world that allow abortion on demand in 20 weeks, the 5th month of pregnancy. In the 5th month, you can operate on the baby to save the baby's life, but you provide anesthesia because the baby feels so much pain. I think nothing could be more painful than an abortion. So again, we're one of 7 nations. We're trying to get out of that club and prevent abortion on demand in the 5th month.
Pro-life leaders say that you're a chief strategist of this movement. Failure seems to be part of this strategy. You don't have the votes. Why are you doing it?
Well, because 76% of the American people understand what we're trying to do. I'm trying to get 60 senators to understand, and there's a lag between the public and the Congress. So it took us 15 years to partial birth abortion ban. Eventually we got it passed. It was my bill, the Victims of Unborn Violence Act, that got passed, that if you attack a pregnant woman on federal property, you get charged with 2 crimes, not one. Any damage to the mother and to the unborn child. We're going to win this issue. It's just going to take a while. We'll get over 50 votes. 20 states now have a version of this at the state level. So majorities matter. I want to thank Senator McConnell for allowing us to bring the bill up. America will be a better place when we stop abortion on demand in the 5th month of pregnancy. There's no real good reason for this. This is not who we are as a people, and we're going to keep fighting till we win.
Let's move to immigration. The last immigration deal fell apart. You criticized President Trump for repeatedly changing his mind. What makes you confident this won't happen again?
Well, he put it in writing this time. And, you know, the President Trump on Tuesday a couple of weeks ago commanded the room for 55 minutes on immigration. We need security with compassion. Then Thursday, we kind of took a step backward. He's got a very credible proposal. 1.8 million Dreamers will have a pathway to citizenship. The Gang of Eight bill spent $40 billion on border security. This is 25. We got to deal with chain migration and a few other issues. But at the end of the day, I think this is a credible proposal. It's in writing, and I hope Democrats will sit down and work with us to get to a solution.
You play golf with the president. You dine with the president. Does criticizing him put you in a delicate position?
Well, I don't know. I enjoy his company, but the best way I can be a friend to anybody is tell them what I think. And I've been working on this for 10 years. I think the president's got a good heart on immigration. I don't think he has any animosity toward the Dreamers or illegal immigrants in general. But he's right to want to get a secure border and not have 11 million 20 years from now. So I'm going to work with the president where I can. I enjoy his company, but at the end of the day, it's just about speaking truth. And I do believe that some things said Thursday were kind of out of line, but now we're back on track, so I'm going to look on the positive.
Okay, sounds good. We'll see if the Art of the Deal author can close the deal. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina.
I hope so.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio fires his chief of staff over charges of misconduct. The Republican says an investigation found the staffer engaged in behavior that amounted to threats to withhold employment benefits. No further details were released. Alex Azar is sworn in as President Donald Trump's second health secretary.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
of the office upon which I'm about to enter.
of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Pro-life group Susan B. Anthony List says the former drug company executive will do a great job implementing a pro-life agenda as head of Health and Human Services. Azar says he will work to lower prescription drug prices and fight the opioid crisis. President Trump will focus on economic progress in his first State of the Union address tomorrow night and pitch his agenda for 2018. His speech to the nation will cover everything from infrastructure to a more contentious issue, immigration reform. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. The White House says the theme of President Trump's speech is building a safe, strong, and proud America. People representing both sides of the immigration issue will attend the State of the Union, and viewers from all over the country will tune in, including one Syrian immigrant I spoke with who tells me he'll pay close attention to what the president has to say.
I am here tonight to deliver a message of unity and strength.
Trump delivered an address to the nation last year, but this will be his first State of the Union. A senior administration official says tomorrow night's speech before a joint session of Congress will focus on 5 topics: the economy, trade, infrastructure, national security, and immigration.
What rights do they have to destroy our families?
It's that last point that stirs controversy. Bill Canny directs immigration and refugee services for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. He says Trump's immigration reform plan doesn't include protections for immigrants from countries like Syria, who have temporary protected status, or TPS, in the United States.
They came here, they're legal at this time. There's no mention of them here.
The Catholic Legal Immigration Network reports Syria is now in its 7th year of a catastrophic civil war, and citizens suffer violence, brutality, and torture at the hands of the Syrian government, the Islamic State of Iraq, and the Levant, or ISIL. It concludes the safe return of Syrian nationals is impossible, so those in the U.S. should remain protected. This week, the Trump administration will decide to renew or cancel TPS for Syrian immigrants.
It's a very grim situation for a lot of people.
I spoke with Monzer Shikali, a TPS recipient and senior biology major at the University of Iowa. He says he'd be arrested and forced to fight for Syria's oppressive regime if he returned home.
They would take me to try to make me fight in the army, which is obviously something that I'm not trying to do, an army that's internationally condemned for killing its citizens and committing humanitarian crimes and chemical warfare.
White House officials tell me temporary protected status was created to be just that, temporary, and it's the job of Congress to take action and come up with permanent solutions for TPS recipients. Lauren?
Mark, is Congress considering any solutions at this time?
Well, one piece of legislation called the Secure Act was introduced back in November by Democrats in the Senate. It would allow qualified TPS recipients to apply for legal permanent residency.
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thank you, Mark. In Afghanistan, at least 11 Afghan troops are dead after a terrorist attack on a military base near Kabul. This as both the Taliban and ISIS step up attacks across the country. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reports. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. The head of the U.S. Central Command is expressing his condolences to the families of the victims. Despite a particularly violent week, he says the attacks will not shake the U.S. commitment to the country.
They need to deal with this particular enemy right here. So, as horrible as this is, to me, this strengthens our resolve to help them move forward.
And victory is still possible.
Absolutely.
General Joseph Votel voicing his confidence in U.S. and Afghan forces in the wake of a series of deadly attacks. ISIS claims it's responsible for an overnight assault on an Afghan military academy. A suicide bomber struck first outside the school, then a gun battle ensued. 4 of the attackers were killed and 1 arrested. It comes after a suicide bombing on Saturday that killed more than 100. The attacker drove an ambulance filled with explosives into a busy shopping area. Many of the wounded lost arms and legs.
Fino a quando il popolo afghano?
This weekend, Pope Francis asked, how long will the Afghan people have to endure this inhumane violence? The Holy Father prayed for the victims and all those who work to build peace. But Jim Phillips, a Middle East expert, says the terrorist goal is to destroy any prospect for peace.
The Taliban knows it cannot convince people to accept it, so it basically has to intimidate them through terrorism.
Phillips believes the recent attacks are actually a sign of weakness, since the terrorists cannot win a military battle against the U.S. and its allies.
It has adopted a spoiler strategy that essentially we'll try to blow up anything you try to build in Afghanistan and hope that the U.S. will get tired and go home.
But the U.S. military says it's not going home. Phillips notes the Trump administration has stepped up airstrikes against Taliban targets in the country and put more pressure on Afghanistan's neighbor, Pakistan, who has in the past allowed the Taliban to build a stronghold in its country. Lauren?
Thank you, Wyatt Goolsby reporting. President Rodrigo Duterte visits the site of an erupting volcano in the Philippines. Officials are worried Mount Mayon may spew lava for months. It is the country's most active volcano, with about 50 eruptions in the last 500 years. Ireland's prime minister says he will campaign to ease the country's strict abortion laws. Abortion currently illegal. But a referendum will be held this summer on the issue. It is expected to involve the possible repeal of a 1983 constitutional amendment. That amendment recognizes the equal right to life of the mother and her unborn child. An appeals court in Chile dismisses sex crime charges against an ex-bishop forced to resign in 2012, saying there isn't enough evidence. It comes a week after Pope Francis's visit to the country was marked by protests over the church's handling of sex abuse cases. And the Pope reaches out to the Ukrainian Catholic community.
Che Dio non è una cosa lì, no, che la Chiesa è viva.
The Holy Father paid a visit to the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Basilica of St. Sophia on Sunday. Rome has a sizable immigrant population from the Ukraine. Juliette Lindley is EWTN News Nightly's Vatican correspondent. She joins us from Rome. Juliette, what message did the Pope bring to the Greek Catholic faithful of Ukraine?
The Holy Father brought a message of solidarity. He said that he was praying for an end to the armed conflict in eastern Ukraine, and he also expressed sorrow for the economic hardships that the people of Ukraine are facing. Now, on a more personal note, he talked about how he had known the major Archbishop of the Ukrainian Greek Catholics, Sviatoslav Sevchuk, back in Argentina before either of them had the titles that they now have. And so Pope Francis talked about how when Shevchuk left the country, he gave a gift to the Pope, and it was a gift of an icon, the icon of the Virgin of Tenderness. And the Pope said to this day he keeps it by his bedside, and every night he kisses it, and every morning he does the same. And so he said to the faithful, in a way, he begins every day in Ukrainian, if you wish.
Wow, that's impressive. Now, you recently visited St. Sophia and the Major. Archbishop showed you the crypt in which the founder of the basilica is buried. Tell us a little bit about the history of that basilica.
Yes, he showed me the crypt in which the heart of the former major Archbishop Joseph Sleepy is buried. Now, Joseph Sleepy was exiled from Ukraine, and in the 60s, he came to Rome for Vatican II and stayed here. And he had this Basilica of St. Sophia built in the late 60s, and that became the mother church for the Ukrainian Greek Catholics throughout Soviet times. Now, Sleepy died in '84, but he made sure that it was known that he wanted his remains to be sent back to Ukraine when communism eventually fell. Now, in 1991, that is what happened. His remains were sent back to Ukraine, but the heart remained in Rome in the crypt of the Basilica of St. Sophia.
The Holy Father, Juliet, prayed for an end to this horrible armed conflict in eastern Ukraine. He did this on Sunday. What role has the Pope played in this peace process between Moscow and Kiev over the last few years?
Well, what is known as the so-called forgotten war in Ukraine has been the center of a lot of Holy See diplomacy in the last years. Now, as you'll remember, the Vatican Foreign Minister, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, went to Kiev in 2016. And soon after that, the pontiff launched what was known as the Pope for Ukraine charitable mission, in which an extraordinary collection was launched in churches throughout Europe, and some 5 million euros were collected to help those who are suffering from the war in the country.
It's a lot of money. Juliet Lindley, thank you so much for joining us. EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent.
Thank you, Lauren.
Coming up, no winners here. My thoughts on the political and sexual overtones of Sunday's Grammy Awards show. And pro-life push, a walk for the unborn on the West Coast. Bishop George Murray of Youngstown, Ohio, opens Catholic Schools Week by saying, quote, Jesus Christ came to change hearts and to serve one person at a time. And so Catholic schools invite students to encounter Christ. There are nearly 1.9 million students, almost 6,500 U.S. Catholic schools. A singer at the Grammy Awards Sunday night sends a strong pro-life message. Joy Vila wears a white dress on which she painted by hand the image of an unborn child. She also carried a bag with the message, Choose Life. Vila tells Fox Business, quote, I am a pro-life woman, and this year I decided to make a statement on the red carpet. Joining us now is Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief for The Hill. Welcome back.
Hey, Lauren.
Hillary Clinton also made an appearance at the very top of the Grammys. You're
Yep.
seeing the book here where supposedly auditioning for the audio recording of Michael Wolff's very Trump-critical Fire and Fury. And in an interview, Michael Wolff insinuated that UN Ambassador Nikki Haley had an affair with President Trump. You see Nikki Haley right here. She called it disgusting, says it shows the kinds of accusations women routinely face. With the rise of this Me Too movement, shouldn't the Grammys have been a little bit more politically correct, or is this their version of politically correct?
I think that's a great question. I mean, you haven't seen a lot of Democrats defend Haley. There are a fair amount of things in the Michael Wolff book that are wrong. Not to say everything's wrong, but a fair amount. But yet it's selling very well. So, but Lauren, I mean, everything is political now.
Well, it is, but I will talk later in a commentary about how the politics always seem to lean left. Anyway, we'll get to that soon. Let's move on to the breaking news today. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe announced that he is leaving his job effective on Monday, sending ripples through the political world today. He was supposed to retire in March. The White House said the president was not involved in his decision to quit. Your take?
Well, Trump has been critical of McCabe on Twitter, so certainly there has been pressure for McCabe to go, and basically he's using his vacation days before he gets to his pension retirement, so he gets benefits. But it raises a lot of questions. Why now, before this possible release of this intelligence memo comes out? I think it raises a lot of questions. It'll be interesting to see if McCabe talks, or are the legal reasons, because a lot of people think he's going to be mentioned in this memo, that he won't talk because of legal reasons. We'll see.
Somebody called it, the version of a Saturday night massacre. Is that going too far?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, if Trump gets rid of Mueller via Rosenstein at the Department of Justice, then that's similar, but this is not that.
Let's talk about immigration. President Trump's latest immigration plan, not doing so well, criticized by both the right and the left. Let's listen to Nancy Pelosi.
That plan is a campaign to make America white again.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Do you think Democrats and Republicans with language like that can come to a deal?
No, I do not think so.
Right,
and,
okay.
And I thought before the shutdown they had a shot to make a deal. Now I've changed my mind. I really think this is going to be almost impossible. Remember, Lauren, immigration's been debated for 10 years. They haven't been able to get it. So whether they're going to get it done in the next couple of months, I don't think so. I think it becomes a campaign issue, and then both parties run on it.
I'm smelling infrastructure.
Yeah, yes.
I think we may be bypassing this.
Yes, I think so.
State of the Union coming up very quickly before we go. He called for unity, bipartisanship. Do you think that will happen again?
I think he's going to talk about the economy and how it's doing well, and talk about the tax bill, now law, and try to have, I think, a unifying type of moment. But it's a polarizing time, Lauren. I don't think many Democrats are going to be singing Kumbaya after that speech.
I don't either. Or Republicans. All right. Thank you so much, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief for The Hill. Tens of thousands attend Saturday's Walk for Life in San Francisco. Police did not provide a crowd count, but organizers say they were anticipating a crowd of 50,000. This is 1 week after a march for the unborn in Los Angeles drew about 35,000. That was one of San Francisco's event organizers saying the Walk for Life is also a walk for hope. Up next, Out of Tune. My thoughts on why the Grammy Awards sent the wrong message to Americans. And kids in New Orleans prepare for Lent. Pope Francis welcomes the Italian Red Cross, highlighting their service throughout the country and the world. He also applauds their work with migrants, both in daring rescues at sea and in greeting them when they arrive on land. And Pope Francis moves several 20th century martyrs closer to sainthood. Among them, 19 people murdered in Algeria in the 1990s, including Bishop Pierre Clavier and 7 Trappist monks. The monks were the subject of the 2010 movie Of Gods and Men. And Veronica Antal, killed in Romania in 1958. She was stabbed 42 times during an attempted rape. She died at the age of 22.
Dove la Madonna è di casa, il diavolo non entra.
Pope Francis celebrates Mass at the Basilica of St. Mary Major Sunday in Rome, speaking before a refurbished icon of Our Lady, one of the Pope's favorites. He said, when Mary is in the home, the devil does not enter. I am not a prude, but last night's Grammy Awards ceremony made me cringe on many levels. The political and sexual nature of the celebration of top musicians was, to use a Trumpism, sad. The grinding of scantily clad female dancers was not fit to watch with my 10 and 14-year-old daughters, but that's been a problem for decades. I'll say what's been said many times before, that entertainment too often tells our young women that dressing provocatively makes them beautiful. It doesn't. But now we've added hypocrisy to the equation as these women undermine the key principles that the Me Too Hollywood movement is trying to promote. Superstars like Miley Cyrus, Kesha, and Lady Gaga gratefully dialed it down in their clothes, and that was fit for primetime. But for all of the attention the stars received, it is rare that pro-life anything gets covered at the Grammys. But this wedding dress, worn by a 26-year-old who happens to be a friend of Ivanka Trump's, was hand-painted with the image of a fetus surrounded by a rainbow, at least received a few mention. She paired it with a purse that said, "Choose life." And I think I speak for many who say they could do without all of the swipes at conservatives in every award show we see. Maybe it's no coincidence that last night's Grammy Awards plummeted in the ratings. Finally, tonight we will celebrate Mardi Gras in a few weeks, but some Americans are getting a head start. A family-friendly party featuring more than 100 children marched through the streets of the Big Easy. It's just one of many events held during Carnival season leading up to Ash Wednesday. A reminder, it is coming up on February 14th, and a reminder to that person who sends me a king cake every single year for Mardi Gras, bring it on. We're waiting. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. We're ending our show tonight with more images of the Holy Father's busy weekend. Good night, and God bless you.